later. We talked about network interfaces. Now let us talk about key pairs.
Okay.
So when we launch an instance, we launch the instance with the means we attach a key pair to the instance. And
Yeah.
what is a key pair? Key pair is a pair of public and private key, right? And the
Yeah.
public key is stored on the instance. Okay, public key is stored on the instance, and the private key is stored on the, like when we launch the instance, we download a key, right? That is a
Yeah.
private key, and with the help of private key, we log into the server. So public key is like a kind of lock, and
Yeah.
private key is a kind of key.
Okay.
With the help of the private key, we unlock the lock. The
Okay.
lock is the public key. Okay. So from here, we can create a new key pair, and while launching the instance, we can use the key pair to connect to it.
Okay. Okay.
So key pair name, let's say,
My AMI keeping, oh, my EC2 keeping.
yeah, you can give any name. The name must be unique. If the name is already in use, then it is going to give us an error.
Okay. Okay.
Now to go to network interfaces. So we already talked about network interfaces. So network interfaces are basically NIC card through which basically our instance communicate over the network. Right?
Okay.
We can also create our own key pair and we can upload it to AWS. Okay. To
Okay.
create key pair, let's say in our terminal, we can run this command ssh keygen. And what this is going to do, it is going to generate a public and private key.
Oh, okay.
And then we go to this directory. We'll be able to see one public and private key. So this is the public key, which is ending with PUB, and
Mm-hmm.
this is the private key.
Okay.
So what we can do is we can upload this public key to here to AWS, and while launching the instance, we can choose that key pair to launch the instance.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can SSH or we can connect to the instance by this private key, which is in our local machine.
Okay.
Yep. Let's go to AMI. Okay, our AMI is now available. Now what we are going to do is we are going to terminate this instance.
Oh, wait.
Start.
Your instance. Okay. We're gonna terminate it.
Yeah, terminate it. Now with the help of the AMI which we created, we are going to launch a new instance.
Okay. My instance is still pending. I mean, my AMI is still pending.
So
Since the
refresh the
video.
page, refresh it.
Oh, it's still pending. So since the video is gonna take a long time, when we finish with the course, can you just send me the notes that you drew? Because those notes are really good.
Actually, those notes, uh,
Like on there from that.
whiteboard, right? Yeah.
because it's going to help me study.
Yeah, I can understand what you're trying to say. Um, Let me check with Matt, and I'll try to arrange the video for you. Because
Okay.
those images actually I don't save in my machine.
You didn't save them?
Yeah, I don't save them actually. Because
Oh,
those are already on I mean, on AWS. I mean, on the video. Those are already captured in the video. That's
oh,
why actually I don't do that.
okay.
See if your AMI is ready now.
No.
Okay, so my AMI is ready. So now what we are going to do is we are going to launch an instance with this AMI. So
Okay.
launching the instance is just the same. So what we are going to do is we are going to go to instances,
Mm-hmm.
and at the right side launch instance.
Okay.
Then you go to my AMIs, and this is the AMI which we created. Here you can see in my AMIs you will be able to see the
Yeah.
AMI which you have created. And we are going to select this AMI. We are going to set it with 1 CPU and 1 GB of RAM,
Okay.
and rest details we'll keep it as default. In security group we'll make sure that port 3389 is open because it is a
Yeah.
Windows Server instance, and launch. So the instance is running straight.
Okay.
Now we are going to use the remote desktop client. Is your
Okay.
AMI ready now?
No. Mm-mm.
You try refreshing the page.
I did already.
Okay, then we are going to set the IP address of the instance because this is a new instance, so the IP address will be different. And the username will be the same, which is administrator.
Okay.
And the password, we'll click on connect. And
Okay.
here we'll go to RTP client. And from here, basically, we'll get the password. And it says the instance is just launched, so it says it is basically asking us to wait for 4 minutes in order to get the instance running.
Okay. Yeah, it's still not doing it, but I'm just gonna watch you anyway.
See if it is ready now, your instance.
No, it's not ready.
I don't know why. Okay.
Well, I'll just watch you do it.
So it seems it is taking long to generate the password. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly
Yeah,
pump the instance up with the
you stopped it?
instance type. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to change the instance type. So to change the instance type, first we have to stop the instance. And then we are going to change it to t2.kb.
Okay.
And instance settings, change instance type. And start. Okay, so we'll get back to this instance later because I think it is taking some time to come up.
Okay.
So till then, let us talk about instance types.
Okay.
Okay, we are already familiar with the pricing, EC2 pricing. Okay, like there is an hourly rate for the instances which we use, the instance type actually we use. Okay, so we have three types of instances: on-demand instances, reserved instances, and spotted. So on-demand instance basically has a hourly price. The pricing, if we talk about first, let us talk about in terms of pricing. So on-demand basically has a hourly price. Okay, right now if we go to the console
Uh-huh.
and if we click on launch instance,
Oh, my AMI is finally available.
okay, you can launch that AMI as an instance and follow along.
Wait a minute. So,
Go to launch instances and then go to my AMIs. You'll be able to see the AMI which you created.
okay. Okay.
Okay, so we are going to choose this AMI. Instance type, we'll set it to 1 core CPU and 1 gigabyte of RAM. And we'll just jump to the review and launch page.
Okay.
And in review page, we'll be able to see lots of other information of your instance.
Yeah.
Now, if you uh, click on this drop down which says instant details,
Yeah.
so here in purchasing option, you will find on demand.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And that's what you were just talking about.
Yes. So the instance which we launch by default is basically a on-demand instance. The pricing in an on-demand instance is hourly price. Okay.
So, here's the key pair that I just created.
Okay. Yeah, you can launch the instance. You can launch the instance.
Okay. All right, I did. So now I have to create a password, right?
Yeah, wait for it. Wait for it. It will take some time to come up actually.
Okay.
Okay. So the pricing is hourly. And now let us talk about what will be the use cases of using on-demand instances. Use cases will be, let's say, dev server. Do you know what is dev server?
The developer server.
Exactly. So if you want to keep a server, if you want to deploy a server for your developers or for your testing team, in that case, basically we use on-demand instances. Okay.
Okay.
We can also use it in production environment. Production server, it means the live server, which is actually hosting the application which is live to the end users.
Okay.
Now, when we are going to use an on-demand instance, okay, if we have to run the server for less than 1 year, we have to run the server less than 1 year. In that case, basically, we are going to use the on-demand instance.
Okay.
So if you want to run your server or run your instance less than a year, in that case, basically we use on-demand instance. Okay.
Okay.
Then we have reserved instances, and the pricing is yearly. yearly. And if you want to run your application, let's say you want to run your application, or you can say run your server for 1 to 3 years. In that case, basically, when you are sure that you are going to use AWS to host your application, let's say for a year, so in that case, we use reserved instances. Okay.
Yeah.
If we talk about difference between these instances, so there is only one difference, and the difference is of pricing. The rest everything is same.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is just the pricing. If we talk about on-demand instance, it's very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's very expensive as compared to reserved instances and spot instances. So on-demand instances are very expensive as compared to reserved and on-demand instances.
Okay.
And reserved instance is cheap. Is cheap as compared to on-demand instances. Okay. The reserved instance is cheap as compared to on-demand instance.
Okay.
Okay. And the use case of using is reserved instances for production servers. For production servers, another use case is if you are sure about your compute needs.
Okay.
What are compute needs? Compute needs are the instance type. Okay, now let's say you are sure that you are going to use T2.micro for a year. So in that case, we can use reserved instances. But let's say you are not sure that you are going to use T2.micro for a year or let's say for 6 months. So in that case, you can use on-demand instance. Okay. Reserved instance are almost, I would say, 40 or 50% cheaper as compared to on-demand instance.
Okay.
So we use this reserved instance in case we are sure about our needs. Okay, we are sure that we are going to use AWS for a year or for 3 years to host our server. Plus, we are sure about our compute needs. We are not going to change the server configuration in the future. In
Mm-hmm.
that case, basically we use reserved instances, which are very cheap as compared to on-demand instances.
Mm-hmm.
And if we talk about payment type, so there are three payment models available. One is all upfront, then partial upfront, and no upfront. So these are the three payment models available
Mm-hmm.
in reserved instances.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here in on-demand instance, the payment is monthly.
Okay.
Now let us talk about spot instances. So we first let us talk about pricing. So the pricing, first we have to bid the pricing in spot instance. Okay, there
Okay.
is no hourly charge or there is no yearly pricing.
Okay.
So here we have to bid a price. Okay, like let's say you want to run an instance and your budget is let's say $200. You
Mm-hmm.
want to run the instance for a specific period of time.
Okay.
So there are basically bidding values available of the instance.
Okay.
Okay, and those are very less as compared to the hourly charge which is proposed in the on-demand instance. So if we talk about on-demand, if we talk about pricing of Spot instances, so Spot instances are the cheapest.
Okay.
Spot instances are the cheapest. These cheapest, if we compare it with on-demand instance, are reserved instance. So it is the cheapest. Now use case, let's say you want to test something out. Like you want to test your application. To test your application, you need more compute resources.
Okay.
So in that case, basically we can use Spot instances, which are very cheap. And basically, if if our need is for couple of hours or days,
Mm-hmm.
then we use Spot instances, or else we use on-demand or reserved instances.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Spot instances are the cheapest. Now let us see how we can deploy these instances. So if we talk about the reserved instances, we already know how to deploy an on-demand instance. Now let us see how we can deploy a reserved instance.
Okay.
So these are some of the things which I like, yeah, which we discuss right now, and these are some of the things which are directly asked in the certification exam.
Okay.
Okay, let us see if we can connect. Yeah, try to connect to this instance, the one which we launched. Not able to connect to it.
It's not available. The password is not available.
I see. Okay, we'll get back to this instance later. Now let us go to here at the left side. We are talking about instances, instance types. We talked about launch templates. Then we have Spot request. This is basically Spot instance. Okay, we have saving plans, and here we can find reserved instances. So if we click on reserved instances,
Okay.
so you have to purchase a reserved instance. Purchase reserved instance, then the operating system. What will be the
Wait,
operating
wait, wait,
system?
wait, wait.
Sorry?
Where? Oh, here you are. Reserve instance. Okay, so we're going to purchase a reserve instance.
Yeah. Let's say
Okay.
Linux operating system. Let's say Windows operating system,
Okay.
and instance type. Then you have to choose the instance type. Let's say t2.media,
Oh.
and we want offering class. We'll set it to standard. Payment option will set it to all upfront, and terms we'll set it to for 1 year, and then search. So this is the total price which you have to pay for running this instance for a year. An instance of Windows operating system with t2.medium as an instance type.
Okay.
And if you pay all upfront, the price, then you have to pay this price. And if you are going to pay partial upfront,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to pay this price, and then you have to, after 6 months, like partial upfront, it means like you have to pay for 6 months, 6 months upfront, and then for the next I mean, for the next 6 months, you have to pay an hourly charge, okay, which
Okay.
is very cheap as compared to the on-demand instances.
Okay.
Now, if you see for no upfront, in no upfront, we have to pay all the hourly charge, which is
Yeah.
actually cheap as compared to the on-demand instances. Now,
Okay.
depending on our use case, let's say we are sure about
Wait a
our
minute. Why does
compute,
yours is cheaper than mine?
which
My
which
my,
instance
my
type you
up,
have chosen.
huh?
Which instance type have you chosen?
Oh, you know what? You said no up front.
Yeah, I set it
Okay.
to no.
Okay. I had all up front. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so then we have to, yeah, so based on our need, first we have to gather our needs. Okay, let's say you're working for a company and the
Mm-hmm.
company wants to host their application and they are sure that they are going to host their application, let's say at least for 1 year or let's say 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, what we are going to do, we are going to purchase a reserved instance. Okay, that is very cheap as compared to on-demand instances. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, all these instance types which we talked about, they basically differ in terms of pricing. There is no performance changes, just the pricing differs.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Okay, now when we launch the instance, let's say Linux operating system, and let's choose an instance type which is of high size, let's say T3A large, which has 2 core CPU and 8 gigabytes of RAM.
Okay.
So here you will find purchasing option.
Yeah.
And if you click on Spot instance, then it will become a Spot instance. The instance now we are launching will become a Spot instance. And you can see the current price. Okay, the current price is set to, let's say, based on the availability zones, the price is set.
Okay.
Okay, so if you see, if you compare this price with the hourly price, so this is very cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's say if I go to EC2 pricing page.
Yeah.
Now let us compare the pricing. Let us see which is cheap. So here you can, in EC2 pricing, you will find based on the instance which you are choosing, you will find on-demand instances, Spark instances, and the reserved instances. So we'll click on Spark instance. Sorry, not on the Spot instance. We'll go to the on-demand instance, and then we'll compare the price which we are seeing here.
Okay.
And T3A.X large. This is the one I think we are using. I think, yeah, this one, T3A large, right?
Okay.
And this is the hourly rate, which is 0.0752 per hour. And if you see here, if we compare this price with this price, so it is more than, I would say, more than half,
Yeah.
right? The spot instances are very cheap, but we have to bid a price. Let's say I want to run this instance for 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I will just copy this and I'll just open a calculator and we'll multiply it by 10.
Mm-hmm.
So 0.00226 into 10. if I want to run it for 10 hours. So if you see, the price is very cheap. It is not even $1, right? If you see the on-demand instance, if you want to run it for 10 hours, so it will be more than $1.
Yeah.
Not $1, but it is almost zero point 0.7 cents. Whereas the Spark instance is zero point 0.2 cents.
Mhm.
Let's say you want to run it for 100 hours, so you will be charged $2. But whereas, I mean, if you use the on-demand instance, and if you want to run it for 100 hours, then you have to pay $7. And for on-demand, you just need to pay $2.26. So
Okay.
which is cheaper? Or Spot instance is very cheaper as compared to on-demand instance, right?
Okay.
So we have to set a price based on our needs. And once the price is, I mean, once the price is over, okay, once the price is, once the hours are over, AWS will automatically terminate the instance.
Okay.
Yeah. So in what cases we are going to use this kind of instance? When we have to do perform any testing, or we have to do any kind of data migration which require more compute resources, more RAM, more storage, and more CPU resources. And if we see that, and if we have a low budget, so in that case, basically we use spot instances.
Okay.
Okay. So far, any doubts or any question?
No, I didn't purchase the reserved one yet.
Yeah, you don't have to purchase the instance.
Okay.
Yeah, just yeah, you don't have to purchase the instance. If we purchase the instance, then we have to use it for a year.
Oh, okay.
Now let us see. Let us try to connect to this instance. Oh, the password is still not retrieved.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What can be the reason?
Because the instance type is too slow.
Mm, no.
I mean, it's not enough. I don't know.
Okay, let me try one thing. Let me bump it up. So in such cases, what you can do is, if it is a issue of resources, I mean, if it is a resource, if it is a issue of, let's say, the RAM. Okay, so in that case, what we can do is we can bump up the instance. We can increase the, we can change the instance style.
Okay.
I'm
So
just
should I
going to
change it?
quickly do it.
Should I change the instance type?
Yeah, first let me check whether this is the problem or if there is any other issue. We can
Okay.
figure that out then. Yeah. Okay, so we are almost done with EC2. Just we have to test this AMI part, and yeah, and then we are almost done. And we have to talk one more thing in EC2, which is dedicated host, and also we need to talk about IAM roles.
Okay.
Yeah, that is something we didn't talk while. Yeah, it seems something is wrong with that this instance, or I mean with this AMI, the one which we created.
Uh-huh.
So what we are going to do is let us terminate this AMI. I mean, let us terminate this instance.
Terminate the instance.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. What about the AMI?
AMI, yeah, we'll also delete the AMI. Before deleting the AMI, let us see some of the operations which we can perform with the AMI. So if we
Okay.
click on actions, so first option says launch, which means we can use this AMI to launch an instance.
Mm-hmm.
And then you will find spot request. Spot, with the help of spot request, we can use this AMI to launch an instance, a spot
Okay.
instance.
Okay.
And then we have deregister. Deregister, it means deleting the AMI.
Okay.
Then we click on register new AMI. If we
Mm-hmm.
click on register a new AMI, so if we have a AMI, I mean, if we have an image, so that we can provide here. The image must be present in our, I mean, in a cloud storage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you click on EC2 image builder, so then it is going to redirect us to a page where we can build our own AMIs.
Okay. Oh, it gives recipes.
Like which operating system to use and what command you want to execute, those things can be done. Okay, so we talked about okay, image builder is actually not the part of the certification exam. Just to give you an idea what it is, that's why I just showed you. Then we have an option of copy AMI.
Okay.
Okay, this can be used. This can also be used to migrate your server from one region to another region.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what you can do is you can launch your instance. If you have your application running, now let's say after 3 months or after 6 months, you thought, I mean, you have some customers which are located in some other part of the world, and you want to migrate your server from one location to another location.
Okay.
Okay, so what we can do is we can copy the AMI. We can copy the AMI to some other region. Like here, it is looking for a destination region. We can copy the AMI to some other region, and from that, in that region, once it is copied, we can deploy a new instance, which will have the same application data which the AMI has.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I want to send it to Tokyo. I want to send it to Japan. We will not send it to Japan, we'll send it to Ohio, because if we'll send it to Tokyo, so it will take some time. Okay, and copy AMI.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the name of the AMI. Just went away. And now let us go to Ohio. Once it is copied over to this region, then we can click on actions and launch the instance.
Okay.
So by this way, we can migrate our instance from one region to another region. Okay, or migrate our application from one region to another region.
Okay.
So we get back to that region, Virginia. Let us wait for a minute for the same item to be copied. Or we'll just delete it because we don't need it.
Okay. Delete the AMI.
So if we keep it, then we have to pay an hourly charge for that as well. We'll
Okay.
go back to High Virginia. And here we click on actions. Here you'll find modify image permission.
Mm-hmm.
If I click on modify image permission, so you can see here the image is currently private. Now let's say you have another AWS account and you want to make this image publicly accessible.
Okay.
Wait, can you tell me your account ID? I can share it with you and you can check at your end the one AMI which I created.
You want my AWS account number?
Yeah, account number.
Where do I find that at?
Yeah, so to find that you can click here at the right
Oh,
top and
okay.
then click on my account.
Okay, I see it.
Yeah, from here itself you can get it.
It's 306.
1 second. image permission. Yeah, tell me your account number. 306
306 210
210
202
202
526.
526 and add permission and save. Oops.
What is that? It's just
Yeah, it is giving an error that this EMI cannot be shared. That is because it is using an encrypted volume.
okay.
Yeah, so let me spin up quickly a new instance. We quickly create a AMI of that instance, or maybe we have a volume. Go to volumes. Volume. Of a snapshot also we can create a AMI.
Okay.
This is the snapshot and create AMI.
Okay.
The volume actually is set to encrypted. That's why it will create the issue, the error which we are getting. So let me create a new instance. You can follow along if you want.
I'm just gonna watch you because I deleted my AMI by accident.
Oh,
Because when you deleted your Ohio one, I thought you wanted me to delete the AMI. So sorry.
okay. Okay, once this instance is in running state, we will create an AMI of that instance.
Mhm.
So once it is in running state, we will right click on it and click on image and create image.
Okay.
So let's say my new AMI and create. Just we have to make sure that it is not encrypted if we want to share it.
Okay.
So the one which I created, I'll just delete this. So to delete it, what you have to do, we have to just deregister it.
Okay.
Yes, so far in EC2, do you have any doubts or any questions? Because
No,
I know this AMI is going to take some time.
not right now. When I go through everything, and then on Monday I'll have plenty of questions.
Yeah, actually, that is great if you have like maybe you have 2 days of break, so you
Yeah,
can go through all the things. Yeah,
yeah, and then try to understand everything, like how it all flows together.
exactly.
Right
Yeah,
now,
so it is.
right now I'm just taking in information.
Yeah. Okay, now it is available. So now you're going to click on actions and modify image permission. Yeah, please tell me your account ID.
Okay, it's 306
Uh-huh.
210
Okay.
202
02
526.
56. Okay, in your account, go to AMIs and click on owned by, click on private images.
Okay, mirror images. Oh, I have yours.
Yep. Because I have shared the AMI with your account. Now let's say the company has multiple accounts. Let's say you're working in a company and they have multiple AWS accounts. So
Mhm.
with the help of image permissions, we can share that AMI across different AWS accounts.
What would be the reason that I would do that?
Let's say you want to migrate your server or your instance from one account to another account. Or let's say you want the same server in another AWS account. Let's say you have one account, AWS account, which is used by developer, and one is
Mhm.
used by the production team, the operational team.
Mhm.
We can also make it public. Public it means it will be exposed over the internet. Exposed over the internet it means if you go to click on instances at your site, click on instances
Mhm. Now it's
and
on
click
my.
on launch instance. No, 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 no. Go
Oh,
to launch instances, go to community AMI,
oh.
and now here you will be able to find my image. I have I have not shared right now with you. I mean that image. So you will be able to find it in community AMIs. Try to search for that AMI. I think I named it by my new AMI. Or try to search it by this name, this AMI ID. I just shared on the chat.
Okay. Oh, it didn't come up. Hold on. It doesn't come up.
Okay, can you quickly share your screen? Maybe I can help you out with that. Oops, public images. Please stay 1 second. I will find information is set public. Copy images. Okay, quickly share your screen. I can have a quick look. I
Okay.
have given you to access the screen share you.
See?
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, it takes some time. It will take like maybe 30 minutes to an hour to come up here
Okay.
because, yeah. So, this was the AMI which I created. Okay, I created in my account. I am a cloud consumer. right? I'm a customer of AWS.
Uh-huh.
So what I can do is I can create my own AMI and I can make it public. So anyone in the world will be able to see my image and they will be able to use my image.
Okay.
That will fall under community AMI. The community AMIs, all the AMIs of the community AMIs are those AMIs which are created by AWS customers, like people
Okay.
like us.
Yeah.
Okay, now let us talk about a dedicated host. Here at the left side, you'll find dedicated host.
Okay.
Dedicated host, it means basically purchasing a server at AWS end. Okay, purchasing like these instances actually it is running on a server. Okay, all the instances which we launched are basically running on top of the server. Now let's say you want to purchase a server. So in that case, basically we use dedicated host.
Okay.
Right now, the instance which we launch, like the instance, let's say we launch. So let's say this is the server rack inside the data center,
Mm-hmm.
and these are the servers which are mounted. Now, in this server, actually, when we do launch instance, our instance basically launches. And other instances are also running on the same server, let's say for other customers or any other account holder of AWS.
Mm-hmm.
The multiple instances are running on the same server. Okay, do you know about virtual machines?
Yeah.
Yeah, so these instances are basically similar to, not similar, almost, I would say, these are also actually called virtual machines, the instance which you are deploying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that?
That is because on a single server we are running multiple operating systems or multiple servers, okay, which are virtual, which are not physical,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Then we have yeah, so it is running on a server. This is basically called a host. This is called a host, and these are basically our instances of VM. So in dedicated host, basically we purchase a host. We purchase a host, and then all the instances which we deploy, we can deploy it on the same host. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, when we deploy the instance, let's say I deployed first instance. The first instance will be deployed in this host. Then the second instance might be deployed in this host. The third in this host, or maybe in some other availability zone or in some other rack. Okay. Now you have an application which requires multiple servers and they require low latency. Okay. Now
Okay.
let's say on the same server rack, on the same data center, let's say you have multiple racks,
Mm-hmm.
rack of servers. Let's say your server is running, let's say one server is running in this rack or this server and one server is running in another. So there will be a latency. There will be actually a there will be a latency in milliseconds, not even in seconds. Okay. Now to minimize, there are some applications which require very less latency, very less latency. Okay.
Okay.
So in that case, what we can do is we can purchase a host, and while launching the instance, we can launch all the instances in the host on the host.
Okay.
So what this will help us in minimizing the latency between the servers. So the server
Okay.
will be able to communicate with each other with less latency.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we go to dedicated host, basically if we go to limits, before talking about dedicated host, let's go to limits.
Yeah.
And Yeah, so if you go here, dedicated host, if you see current limit, it is set to 0.
Okay.
0, it means we cannot create any dedicated host.
Oh, okay.
We cannot create any dedicated host. Now if you click on allocate dedicated host, so we will not be able to create because there is no limit. First we have to increase the limit by AWS, and then actually we'll be able to use it.
Okay.
So while creating the dedicated host, we have to give a dedicated host name. Let's say my host. Then the instance family which you are going to run. Make lots of sense. Yeah. So the instance you want to run. The type of instance actually you want to run. Let's say C5 instance. Then in which availability zone you want to purchase the dedicated host. Let's say this availability zone. Because what is a dedicated host? That is basically a physical server, physical
Yeah.
hardware. On top of that, your instances are running. And if you
Okay.
see these instant families, these are basically hardware types, different types of hardware.
Mhm.
And then number of dedicated hosts we need and allocates. And it will give us an error because there is no limit. The limit is set to 0.
Mhm.
So, so first we have to increase the limit from AWS end, and then we will be able to purchase a dedicated host. And if we talk about pricing, so it is very, I would say, very expensive. Of, I mean, using a dedicated host. There is an hourly charge for using a dedicated host. Hourly charge of using a dedicated host, and on top of that, all the instances which we deploy, for that also we have to pay an hourly charge.
Okay.
Okay, so now we are going to start with the RDS service of AWS. So before talking about RDS, let me first quickly start this or delete this instance. Okay, tell me something about database, like what kind of understanding you have of a database.
Um, the only database that I really know is Access and SQL. And we use
That's
it
good.
to, I mean, for information.
Okay. So basically, yeah. So databases are used for storing data, right?
Yeah.
So databases basically we have of two types. One is SQL database and NoSQL database.
Okay.
Do you know what is the full form of SQL?
Do I know what?
The full form of SQL.
No.
The SQL stands for Structured Query Language. And
Mm.
NoSQL stands for No Structured Query. I mean, No Structured Query Language. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now in SQL, the data is stored in the form of tables.
Okay.
Whereas here the data is stored in the form of key value. Okay. Then if we talk about some examples or some databases which support SQL, so as you said, MySQL.
Yeah.
MySQL is basically a SQL database. We have, as you said, Microsoft Access, right? You named that this database, right? Microsoft
Yeah,
Access.
Microsoft
Yeah,
Access.
yeah. So we have Microsoft Access. We have MariaDB. We have DynamoDB. Sorry, MariaDB. We have Oracle Database Server. Have you heard about Oracle Database?
Oh yeah, Oracle. I've never used it before though.
I see. Then we have Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, actually, we don't have to use any of these servers. I mean, these databases. What we have to do is we have to just do the deployment. Who uses the database? The developer uses the database, right? Or our application basically uses the database, right?
Yeah.
So our task is to deploy the database. So RDS is a service
hmm
where we deploy SQL databases. Okay, there are some other services of AWS which basically deals with NoSQL databases, but
hmm
this is the service RDS which deals with SQL databases.
Yeah.
Now there are 6 types of database engines. As we discussed, RDS is basically supports SQL databases, and there are 6 types of database engines which RDS supports. Okay, one is MariaDB, or I would say MySQL, MariaDB. Then we have Postgres, Postgres SQL Server. Then we have Microsoft SQL Server.
hmm
Then we have Oracle Server. We have Aurora.
hmm
This is a database which is created by AWS, Amazon Aurora. And this database is only available in AWS, Amazon Aurora.
Okay.
Another database is basically we can install these database in our system also.
hmm
But whereas this database is only available in AWS, and which is only available in RDS service of AWS. Okay.
mm
Have you ever done the installation of a database?
No.
Okay, so let's say you have a Mac laptop. So this is your laptop. And on top of laptop, you have the operating system, which is your Mac operating system. And on top of that, you will be installing the database software. Database is just a software.
Yeah.
So let's say this is your laptop. And on top of laptop, you will be installing, let's say, Mac operating system. And on top of that, you will be installing MySQL database or any SQL database.
hmm
So here you have to manage your laptop, you have to manage your operating system, plus you have to manage the database,
hmm
right? Or
Yeah.
let's say if we deploy the database in our EC2 instance, so we have to deploy the instance, and on top of that, we will be installing the database server. So in that case, you have to manage your EC2 instance, you have to manage your database server, right?
Okay.
But if we are using RDS database, then all these things are taken care by the cloud provider. What we are going to do, we are going to just access the database. We
Yeah.
are just going to access the database. And rest the server, database, everything will be taken care by the cloud provider. So RDS is basically a fully managed service of AWS. Fully
hmm
managed, it means everything is taken care by the cloud provider. So what we are doing, we are just accessing the database.
hmm
Now Now if we go to the console, here we'll click on create database.
Okay.
Sorry, so first we'll click on services, then we'll go to, if we scroll down under databases, we'll find RDS.
I'm there already. I'm where you are with create database.
Right. So create database, and we will go with standard create. Okay.
Okay.
And then engine type. As we discussed, AWS supports 6 database engines.
Yeah.
Here you can see Amazon Aurora, MySQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, Oracle Server, and Microsoft SQL Server. Now,
Hmm.
based on your need, based on your application needs, or based on your developer need, you will be choosing a database type.
Okay.
And the database engine will completely depend upon what application you are using or which database your developer is using.
Yeah.
But this information basically you have to gather from your developer or from your application which you are using.
Yeah.
And based on that, basically you will be choosing a database engine. So for
Okay.
now, let us go with MySQL as we are familiar with MySQL database. Then database version, MySQL version, which version you have to choose.
Okay.
Currently, the latest version is 8. Then we have templates like how we want to deploy the database server.
Yeah.
If you want to deploy it in production environment, dev test environment, or as a free tier.
Okay.
So we want to deploy it in production.
Okay.
Then the database name. Let's say my DB server. Okay, this is just like our EC2 instance name. Like we used to give a name to our instance.
Yeah.
Same way we can give a name to our database instance. Then credentials. The credential to log into the database. So the username, let's say admin,
Okay.
and the password.
Just make up one.
Uh, yes, set your password. Let's say it must not include any special character actually. So
Okay.
numbers and it must have at least 8 characters.
Okay.
Then instance size. Then we'll choose. Now this instance type is basically the instance type. Okay, like in EC2 we had instance type,
Yeah.
right? Where we used to choose t2.micro and those things, right?
Okay. So you
So
want
let's,
multiple classes?
depending on our use. Let's say you need more memory, so we can go with memory optimized class. If you need more CPU capacity, so we have M class. So if we go with bustable class, so we have these types of instances like one core CPU, 1 GB of RAM, and actually it completely depends upon your use case, like how
Yeah.
many resources you need. So let's say one CPU and 1 GB of RAM, because that comes under the free tier.
Okay. So that's the first one.
Yeah, no, the third one, bustable and T2.micro.
To micro.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Let me see which one you have to be sure. 1 GB RAM, not EBS optimized. Micro. Yeah, it's already on that.
Yep. Then the storage, like in EC2 also we saw different types of EBS volume, right? Volume types like provision IOPS, general purpose, and we talked about throughput optimized HDDs and cold HDDs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At the same times we have here. Now based on our needs, we are going to choose the storage type. So
Hmm.
for now, we'll go with general purpose. And in general purpose, the minimum size of storage must be 20 gigabytes.
Okay.
Then we will enable the storage auto scaling.
Hmm.
This is a cool feature which is offered by AWS. I mean, which is offered by RDS actually, which is of storage auto scaling. Which
Okay.
means, let's say you have 20 gigabytes of storage, a disk, 20 gigabyte of disk attached to your instance,
Hmm.
and let's say at the time of, let's say if 50% or let's say 80% of disk is utilized,
Hmm.
so it will automatically increase the storage size.
Okay.
Whereas in EC2 you have to do it manually, but
Yeah.
here in RDS we can do it automatically. Okay, with the help of storage auto scaling. So let's say we are going to set it to 50 gigs. It also completely depends upon your use case. Minimum it must be 21 based on the storage we have allocated, and max is almost 16 terabytes.
Okay.
Then we have another cool feature in RDS, which is multi-easy deployment.
Okay.
Let us talk about what is multi-easy deployment. And that is the reason basically we use RDS database
Okay.
because of this feature which RDS has.
Okay.
So we have a region. As we discussed, we have region, and inside region we have availability zones, right? Now,
Yeah.
what are availability zones? Availability zones are physical data center.
Yeah.
Now, when we launch the instance, so the instance basically launches inside a availability zone,
Yeah.
and EC2 instance also basically launches in a availability zone.
Hmm.
Now, let's say due to some reason this instance gets down or this availability zone gets down,
Hmm.
then your database will also get down,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Now, what you want is you need high availability. High availability, it means zero downtime.
Hmm.
Let's say if your database is down, there will be a downtime, right? Do you know what is downtime?
Um, um, when it's not working, or it's like in sleep mode.
Uh, yeah, if it is not working or if it is not in the working state, that basically we call it as a downtime. Or
Yeah.
let's say the user is not able to access the application, so
Yeah.
that is also a downtime. Yeah. So if your availability zone gets down, your database will also get down. And if it gets down, then your application will also get down because
Yeah.
of the database. Okay, because if your application is using a database, so your application has a dependency of your database.
Okay.
On the same instance, we are going to deploy in another availability zone. When we enable multi-easy deployment, when we enable multi-easy deployment, so what AWS does, AWS creates a replica of the database in another availability zone.
Okay.
Okay, replica of the database, which means any data which is stored inside this database will get replicated in this database.
Yeah.
Now, at the time of downtime, or let's say at the time of your database gets down or your availability zone gets down, so
Uh-huh.
there will be another availability zone which will be hosting your database.
Yeah.
So this database is called primary database, or you can say primary instance,
Okay.
or you can also call it as active instance, active DB.
Yeah.
Whereas this instance is this instance is called standby DB. By the name itself, we can determine that this is an instance which is not running.
Not
Okay,
running.
which is no, actually it is running, but it is not
It,
accepting. Yeah, it is not actually in the real environment.
okay.
It is in inactive state.
Okay.
And when this database gets down or this availability zone gets down, automatically the database, let's say you have an application. This is your application. Let's say this is a user who is connecting to your database.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's say this database gets down. So what it will do, it will automatically make this database as a primary database and
Mm-hmm.
make it active. So without any downtime, your user will connect to the database which is running in some other availability zone. Okay.
Okay. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I think I got a mute. Yeah, so I mean the replication between these databases are called synchronous replication.
Okay.
Okay, so this concept we only have in RDS. We don't have this concept in EC2.
Okay.
Okay, so in a region we have multiple availability zones. Okay, so
Okay.
when we deploy our RDS instance, and if we want to, this kind of deployment actually is optional. Okay, it is optional. Just in case if you want high availability, okay, you want high availability, you want zero downtime, in that case only we use multi-easy deployment. And in multi-easy deployment, the database is deployed in other availability zone.
Yeah.
Okay, and both of them basically have synchronous replication.
Okay.
Okay, which means that data which is created in the primary instance will automatically get replicated to the standby instance.
Okay.
So we'll enable multi-easy deployment, and if you see here, it says create a standby instance and recommended for production usage.
Yeah.
Then connectivity, actually we are going to talk about connectivity later. But also if you see here in multi-easy, we have one option which says connect, create a standby instance, and another is do not create a standby instance. So it
Yeah.
is optional, it is not mandatory. Okay,
Okay.
depending upon your needs or depending on your budget actually. Because if we are using the standby instance, then the database cost will be double.
Okay.
Yeah, because it is going to deploy another instance in,
Two databases.
yeah, it is going to deploy two databases. That's why we have to pay the price of two databases.
Yeah. That makes sense.
This is the networking part. Networking we are going to discuss later. I mean, after completing RDS, then we are going to start with VPC, where we will be discussing about networking.
Uh-huh.
So for now, we'll go here, public access.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll make this database as, I would say, yeah, we'll make it publicly accessible. Publicly accessible, it means it will be accessible over the internet.
Okay.
Over the internet, it means from my machine, I will be able to connect to this database.
Okay.
Okay. If I make it no, then only my EC2 instances will be able to communicate with this database.
Okay.
Okay, it is something similar to, if I set to yes, then it is going to get a public IP. If I set it to no, then it will get a private IP, and private IP will be only accessible in the AWS environment, whereas public IP will be accessible over the internet.
Yeah.
And security group, then the port, like SSH works on port 22,
Okay.
right? RDP works on port number 3389,
Okay.
and HTTP works on port number. Mhm.
Huh? It's 3389, right?
HTTP works on which port? HTTP
Oh, 22.
80.
Oh,
SSH
80.
works on port 2022.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. SDK. Okay.
So database basically works on port number 3306. With database, MySQL and I mean these databases, MySQL, MariaDB, these works on port number 3306.
Okay. But
And
we,
others basically works on some other ports.
okay.
Now the security group which we are attaching to our database, we have to make sure that the security group has this port open. Okay,
Okay.
like while we launch the instance, I mean EC2 instance, we used to open port number 22 so that we can connect to the instance. Okay, we used to open port 22 in inbound rule, right?
Mhm.
Then we have database authentication. So we are going to set it with password authentication, which means it will require a username and a password to log into the database.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, and we can also use password and IAM database authentication. Let us go with password and IAM authentication. This is basically very basic thing. Password authentication, it means you just need to provide your username and password and you will be able to connect to the database. But if you use password and IAM authentication, so it's basically a kind of two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
So we have to, yeah, in additional configuration, it is looking for a database name. So what we are going to do, we are going to create a database called MyDB.
Okay.
Then we have parameter groups. So we have parameter group and option group we are going to see later. Then we have backups. So backup is nothing but snapshots. Okay, like in EC2 also we had backup. I mean EC2 also we had snapshot. And
Yeah.
what snapshot does? Basically it
Backup.
basically, yeah, does the backups of our instance, EC2 instance. Now similarly with in RDS also we can create snapshots of our instance.
Mhm.
And if we enable automated backups, okay, automated backups is basically similar to lifecycle manager in EC2, right?
Okay.
Like in EC2, we had lifecycle manager, in which we used to automate the snapshot lifecycle, right?
Yeah.
The same thing we have in RDS, which is basically called automated backups.
Mhm.
So here also we have a retention period, like how many days we have to create the backup of. I mean, how many days we have to keep the backup of.
Yeah.
Let's say 15 days. So what it is going to do, it is going to keep the backup of last 15 days.
Okay.
And then we have backup window. Okay, if we create backup of our instance, so basically it affects the performance of the instance. Okay, when let's say when we are creating the snapshot, let's say of our EC2 instance or our RDS instance, so basically it affects the performance of the database.
Okay.
So let's say we want to create the backup or the snapshot of our instance at a specific time. Let's say I want to create daily at 1 a.m. Okay, 1 a.m. or 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So we can set a backup window. We
Okay.
just need to provide the time, start time, and the end time. Let's say I want to create at 2 a.m. And then what time period we want to create. So let's say I want to create it within 1 hour.
Okay. Okay, potential for you have to select window. Okay.
Yeah, monitoring we are going to discuss later, but for now we'll just enable enhanced monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to discuss completely when we are going to talk about uh, CloudWatch service of AWS.
Yeah.
Then we have maintenance window. I mean maintenance. What is maintenance? Do you
Um,
know about operating system updates or security patches?
no.
Uh, in Windows, have you seen Windows Update?
Yeah.
Yeah, so similarly here also we have, we have updates, operating system updates, depending on the operating system, right?
Yeah.
So as the server is completely managed by AWS, so we cannot perform those updates, right?
Yeah.
So we want AWS to do those updates, okay?
Yeah.
So for that, we have to enable maintenance. And if we enable maintenance, then AWS on our behalf will automatically perform any security patches or is going to perform any updates on our instance, okay, which is actually recommended. Then we have maintenance window. Okay, what is maintenance window? It is same like our backup window.
Okay.
Okay, in backup window we set like at what time we want the backup to be created. Similarly, here in maintenance window, we can set like at what time we want the instance to create the backup.
Okay.
So we can set a maintenance window, okay, and we can set it for once in a week. So in once in a week, it is going to perform a security patch. Let's say on Sunday, let's say 2 a.m. So it says the maintenance window and backup window must not overlap because we are creating the backup also at the same time.
Yeah.
Let's say maintenance, we have set it to 1 a.m. and for zero point 0.5 hours, which means 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Then this is the monthly cost.
Okay.
So we have DB instances. This is the instance, the storage which is attached to it. So here you are able to directly see the password.
Okay.
When we have multi-AZ standby instance, if we are using a multi-AZ instance, we have to pay the same charge, right? For the
Yeah.
DB instance, if you are using a standby instance, if you are
Oh
using
yeah.
multi-AZ, it is,
Same thing. It's just a duplicate of it. Yeah.
yeah. Then create instance.
Okay.
So like our EC2 instance, it takes, like if it is a Linux instance, so it hardly takes a minute to come up.
Okay.
Okay. Whereas if it is a, Linux instance, I mean, whereas it is a Windows instance, so it takes like 2 to 5 minutes to come up, right?
Mhm.
Now, if it is a RDS instance, then it takes 5 to 10 minutes to come up. Okay, so it
Okay.
is going to take 5-10 minutes to come in running state.
Okay.
If we click on the database, so you'll be able to see the information of the instant database.
Okay.
So if you go to the first tab, which says connectivity and security, you will be able to see actually the network information of your database, like in
Yeah.
which availability zone it is. And VPC we are going to discuss later, subnets, we will discuss this part completely later. Then the security group, which is attached to your instance, and public accessibility, which is set to no, which means this database will not be accessible over the internet. Let us go to monitoring,
Okay.
and here we will be able to see the resource utilization of our database.
Mm-hmm.
Now if we go to logs and events, so we'll be able to see the logs of the database. Do you know what is logs? Do you know what is logs?
Yes, like the records of all the activity.
Exactly. So we can see the logs of our database as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let us wait for a minute or two to come it up because it is just generating few information. Like in EC2 we had reserved instances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Similarly here also in RDS we have reserved instances. So we can purchase a reserved database instance also, okay, based on our needs.
Okay.
Then if we go to snapshots, so we can create a snapshot of our database as well. Like the same way we used to do for our database instance.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I mean EC2 instance, right? The same way we can create a snapshot of our RDS instance. Then we have automated backups. So automated backups are nothing but your automated snapshots. Like in EC2, we had lifecycle manager for creating automated snapshots of our EC2 instance,
Okay.
right? The same we have here,
Okay.
automated backup. So in EC2, we used to call it as lifecycle manager, but whereas here we call it as automated backups. Okay, so it is almost ready now. So now you can see some other information of your database as well. Like this is the endpoint. What is endpoint? Endpoint is basically a domain URL through which basically we can access the database.
Yeah. Okay.
Then we have on which port it is running. So in which port it is running, this is the endpoint and which port it is running, and the availability zone, the security group which it is using. Now, as our database is running on port 3306, so we have to go to the security group and we have to change the default port of our security group. I mean, the inbound rule we have to add. So if we go to the security group, which is attached to our instance, the inbound rules. So here we'll click on edit inbound rules and we'll delete all the rules and we'll add one rule of MySQL.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll set it to anywhere. And save rules. Okay, so here you can see the security group which is attached to your instance.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the information of your instance. Now if we go to monitoring, we'll be able to see the logs. I mean the resource utilization of your instance. Now here you can see it has started generating some graphs, some value. Earlier it was not in running state, that's why it was not generating the logs. And if we go to logs and events, the CloudWatch we are going to discuss later, that is completely a different service of AWS. And if we go to events, so we are able to see the events of our database, when it was created, when the snapshot was last created, when it created the multi-agent deployment, performance insights, okay? Then the log files. Okay, if I click on this file, and if I click on view, so you'll be able to see the log file of your instance.
Okay. No problem.
Okay, so we talked about logs and events. So in events, we can see when the database was created, when it was restarted, when the snapshot was created, and those kind of events. And
Yeah.
in logs, we can see error logs, connection logs, who connected to our database. Those information we can get from the log files.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go to configuration, so we'll be able to see the configuration of our database, like
Mm-hmm.
the database name, the database engine which is using, and the database name which we created. I mean, we created one database inside the instance, and the database name was MyDB. And MySQL database actually comes under community, so it is under GPL license, okay, general public license. Options group and parameter group we are going to discuss later. So we are already familiar with ARN. Let us quickly talk about ARN again, as this ARN has a region. Okay, can you tell me about this ARN? What are the fields in this ARN?
You said tell you about the ARN?
Yes.
Mm, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
The first is the prefix.
Oh,
The second is the service name.
Amazon, no.
The
Amazon
third is
resource name. Amazon resource name.
yeah. The third one is the region.
Yeah.
The fourth one is my account ID.
Account ID. The resource type.
Yeah,
And the
source
resource
type. Exactly. Did you wrote somewhere?
name.
Yeah. Resource. Okay, so this is the ARN of our database which we have to provide.
Okay.
Then this is the resource ID. Then when it was created, the creation time, and deletion protection. Like in EC2, we had deletion protection, right? The same deletion protection we have in our RDS,
Yeah.
and it is enabled, which means if we try to delete the database, we will not be able to delete it. So first,
Okay.
we have to disable the deletion protection, and then we will be able to delete it. And this basically helps us in preventing accidental termination. Okay.
Okay.
And the instance class, this is the instance type which we are using, which is t2.micro,
Yeah.
which has 1 vCPU and 1 gigabyte of RAM. And this is the username, and we enabled multi-DB authentication, IMDB authentication,
Mm-hmm.
and multi-easy is set to no. I think the database is still in creation state. Yeah, here you can see it is still in modification state. That's why it is showing right now multi-easy as no.
Okay.
Once it is created, I mean, once it is in running state, let me refresh if it is in running state now. Yeah, now it is in available state. Now
Yes.
here you can see earlier it was showing no, now it is
Yeah.
showing yes,
Yeah.
and it is showing the secondary availability zone where the database is deployed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our primary instance, the active instance, is running in this availability zone, which is D, 1D,
Yeah.
and the standby instance is running in 1F. Okay.
Okay.
And storage actually our volume which is attached to our database instance doesn't have encryption.
Mm-hmm.
And the storage type which we are using, which is general purpose SSDs, and
Mm-hmm.
storage is of 20 gigabytes, and we have enabled storage auto scaling, and we have set it to 50 gigabytes.
Mm-hmm.
And performance inside we have set it to no, and this performance inside are actually supported in only in actually in Amazon Aurora, not all the databases. If we go to maintenance and backups, so we have set up the maintenance window and it says it is enabled, and it has also set a maintenance window when it is going to perform the patches or the
Mhm.
operating system upgrades. Backup is also enabled. Automated backups are last 15 days. Restore time, backup window, and the snapshot which it has created, the latest one.
Mhm.
Okay, after RDs, then we are going to talk about tags. Okay, once we are
Okay.
done with RDs, then we'll talk about tags. Okay, so we discovered all the options which are available in our database instance. Now we'll see how we can connect to this database instance.
Okay.
And as we have created it we have set the public accessibility to no. To connect to this instance, we have to first launch an instance because we have set public accessibility to no. So only our EC2 instances will be able to
Wait a
communicate.
minute. My public accessibility says yes.
Yeah, so maybe you have enabled it.
Oh, do I need to turn it off?
No, actually that is fine. That is fine.
Okay.
So we'll go to EC2 and we'll launch one instance.
Go to EC2.
To launch an instance, I think I already have an instance. I'm going to use this instance.
Okay, I don't have one.
Okay, now we are going to SSH to this instance. So SSH EC2-user. Do you have a one, or do you have to launch a new instance?
Yeah, I'll just watch you do it
Oh,
because I don't have an instance
nice.
because I deleted it.
Oh, it is giving us an error. So what we have to do? We have to run this command to change the permission of the folder.
Mhm.
So we are connected to the instance. Now we are going to connect to the database.
Mhm.
So to connect to our EC2 instance, what we need? We need a client, right? A client software like RDP. Okay. Yesterday, if you remember, we installed one software in your
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah.
So that is what? That software is a client, a RDP client, which
Okay.
is used to connect to a RDP server,
Okay.
which is configured in Windows, right? Now the
Yeah.
same way, if you want to connect to a MySQL database server, so you need a client software. Okay. Now
Mhm.
what we are going to do, we are going to install that client software in our EC2 instance.
Okay.
We are going to do
We're talking
cd.
about the Microsoft.
Now we are sorry.
Which software?
We are going to install MariaDB. I mean MySQL client.
Okay. I'm gonna watch you do it.
Yeah, so I'm going to install a software called MariaDB, which is basically a client software which is used to connect MySQL server.
Mm-hmm.
So I have installed it by running this command, yum install MariaDB, or this one. Then sudo MySQL. We have to use this command to connect to our instance, to our database server. Like to connect to our EC2 instance, what we do? We do use this command, SSH, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, similarly, to connect to our database server, we'll use this command, MySQL -h. And with -h, we have to provide the server endpoint, the RDS instance endpoint. So if we go to RDS, if we go to
Okay.
connectivity and security, we'll be able to find the endpoint. So we are going to copy this
Okay.
and paste it over here. Then the username. So with the help of -u, we are going to provide the username. Then -p. With the help of p, it is going to ask us. It is going to prompt us for a password.
Okay.
Oops. So it says. So it says authentication plugin cannot be loaded. Cannot be no such file or direct. Let me see. So basically, by this command, we'll be able to connect to it. And what this command basically has. I just forgot about sudo. So MySQL is just the command name. Like we have SSH as a command name. Like then with the help of -h, with the help of -h, we are going to provide the RDS endpoint URL. And then using -u-p, -u and the username, we are providing the username to log into the instance, to the database instance.
Okay.
And -p basically will prompt us for a password. Okay, let me do one thing. Okay, let's say this database is private. Right now my database is set to no, which means it will not be accessible over the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to make it publicly accessible. So what we can do is, after launching the database, we can modify it. Okay, see here you have an option of modify. So if you click on modify,
Okay.
so we'll be able to modify all these settings which we have configured on our database.
Mm-hmm.
Like the database version, the database name. If you want to reset the password, so you can reset the password as well. If you want to change the database engine, database size, that also we can change. And if you want to increase the storage, that also we can do. If you want to disable multi-AZ deployment, that also we can do. And if you want to change the security group, now in connectivity, if you go to additional connectivity configuration, so from here you can either make your database publicly accessible and not publicly accessible. So I'm going to set it to publicly accessible. And rest things we'll keep it as default. And here you can find deletion protection. The deletion protection is enabled on our instance. And what it does, protects the database from being deleted accidentally. And as we are running this database in production, I mean, the deployment type was production, the deployment template actually was production. So that's why it is asking us when to apply these changes. So at the maintenance window or immediately. So if we set it to immediately, then it is going to perform that action immediately. Because in some action basically takes some time. I mean, some action actually requires reboot. Right? Let's say if you want to change the instance type of your database, first you have to stop the instance and then start the instance. That requires basically a downtime.
Okay.
So for such operations, you can apply those operations in a maintenance window if it is not urgent. And if it is urgent, then you can apply those changes instantly by setting it to immediately. So yeah, actually we made one mistake. I just right now it clicked on my mind, which is the username is admin. And now we are connected to the database. The username is admin actually. If we go to the console, if you choose the database, if we go to configuration, so here you can see the username, which is admin. I was using root, that's why it was not allowing us to log in. Okay, now we are connected to our database instance. Let's say if we run this query, show databases. Have you ever used a database?
Yes.
Yeah, so SQL database completely look like this, right?
Yeah. Well, see, I've never used SQL, but I've used Access.
Yeah, Access is,
It's a little different. It's a lot different. It's more like Excel, the way that it looks. I've never been like in the back, like like in the development of a database or anything like that. I've just used it as a function.
okay.
So this is like teaching me how to create one.
Yes. Okay, so we were connecting to a database. And now after connecting to the database, we can perform any operation inside the database, like creating the database, creating tables, and inside basically tables we store our data.
Yeah.
So far, do we have any doubts or any questions?
No, this one is not that complicated.
Okay. Now let us see other options. I mean, the different types of operations which we can perform in our RDS instance. So if we click on actions,
Okay.
so here you can find stop. Stop means stopping your instance. Reboot means rebooting or restarting your database server. Delete means terminate it, means delete the database instance,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
These all options basically we had in EC2. That's why you're finding it easier to understand.
Yeah.
Read replica we are going to discuss later, and then you have take snapshot. So we can, from here itself, we can create a snapshot of our database instance. So if we click on take snapshot, just we need to provide a snapshot name. Let's say my DB snapshot and take snapshot.
Okay.
So it will start creating the snapshot.
Okay.
So here you can see the status is changed to backup. So it's still in creation state. Once it is created, we'll be able to see the snapshot.
Yeah.
And once it is created, it will be basically our backup. And then using this snapshot, we can launch a new instance. Let's say if you click on this snapshot,
Mm-hmm.
the one which you created, and click on action, and then restore snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
And once we click on restore snapshot, what it is going to do, it will redirect us to the launch instance page. So with this snapshot, we are going to then launch a new instance. So all the data inside the instance
Mm-hmm.
will be the same
Mm-hmm.
at the time we created the snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
Now the database name we can set the database instance size. We can set whether to make it publicly or privately accessible. So this is basically restoration of your backup, right? This is basically your restoration of your backup.
Yeah. My snapshot is not letting me restore it.
No, 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 no. Actually, you are might not be created. I already had one. That's why I just quickly did that.
Oh, okay.
I think it is created now. Just refresh. Maybe your might also might have been created.
Okay. How long is our class today?
Uh, Actually, it depends upon you.
Okay.
Do you want it till 2:30 or 3:30?
2:30 is good.
Yeah, because 6-7 hours actually it becomes like during the first like 3-4 hours we are very energetic, and
Yeah.
after that we start getting.
Yeah. For me, I mean, this is so much information, especially because it's so new. So like after in the afternoon, I don't really have much left.
So we saw restore snapshot, which what it is going to do, it is going to deploy a new instance for us.
Yeah.
Then if we go to copy snapshot, so what copy snapshot is going to do, it is going to copy the snapshot to another region of AWS.
Yeah.
So we can set a destination region. Now let's say you have a database running in Virginia region. Now you want to migrate this database or you want to replicate this database to another region of AWS. So what we can do, we can first create a snapshot and we can copy that snapshot to that specific region. And in that region, with that snapshot, we can restore it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say if I copy it to Ohio, and let's say we have to set a snapshot name. Let's say my DB from Virginia.
Mhm.
Target group is option. Target option is option actually. And if you want to encrypt it, we can encrypt the volume which is attached
Mhm.
and copy snapshot.
Okay.
So it will be copied to Ohio region. Yeah, here you can see it is in creation state.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have copied the snapshot from Virginia to Ohio. Right now I'm in Ohio region. And in
Okay.
this region, once it is created, then what we can do, we can restore it.
And what would be the purpose of creating a snapshot in a different region? It's just so that somebody else can access the database? Like, so that you can access the database in another region?
You mean the use case?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the use case will be, let's say you want to migrate your data. Let's say your company has shifted to Ohio, or let's say
Yeah.
some other geographic location.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, let's say you have a company has opened a new headquarter in Ohio.
Yeah.
So in that case, what we can do is we can deploy the database in that region as well to minimize the latency.
Yeah. And then instead of having to go in and create a whole new database, it's just going to create a replica of what was already created.
Yeah. There are several other solutions also available, which we are going to discuss
Okay.
after talking about multi-agent.
Okay.
Okay, once it is created, it is going to take some time. It is only completed 1%. It will take like 5-10 minutes to replicate it. Once it is replicated or not replicated, once it is copied to this region, then we can restore it. We can restore it in a form of a RDS instance.
Okay.
Now, if we go to, yeah, so yeah, so we saw the second option, which is copy snapshot. Now the third option is share snapshot.
Uh-huh.
Just like we shared our AMI, okay,
Mhm.
we made it public. The same operations we can perform here also. Like we can create our, I mean, we can make our snapshot publicly accessible, or we can share it to a specific AWS account as well.
Okay.
Okay, these things actually depends upon our use case. It depends upon what you want to do, and it depends upon your scenario. Actually,
Mhm.
in case you have multiple AWS accounts and those things, in that case, basically we do this thing like sharing the snapshot to other AWS account.
Mhm.
Now, if I go to RDS, I mean the snapshot in another region, Ohio, so
Yeah.
it is copied over. It is available now. Now in this region, Ohio, what I can do, I can restore it. Okay. Now we have the option of restore snapshot. And what restore snapshot will do, it will launch a new instance, new RDS instance.
Mhm.
So we saw share snapshot. Now let us talk about export to Amazon S3. Do you know about S3?
No.
S3 is basically a storage service of AWS. So for now we'll skip it. And when we will talk about S3, then yeah, it will be easier to understand.
Okay.
And the very last option is delete snapshot, which will delete the snapshot.
Okay.
Now, if we go to automated backups, so we'll be able to see the snapshot which are automatically created by AWS. And the same operation, the operation which we performed here in snapshot, the manual snapshot, the same operations we can perform with these snapshots, like restoring point in time. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we have reserved instances. Okay, we already talked about EC2 reserved instances. The same concept we have here. Like if you want to purchase an instance for a year or 2 years or 3 years, so in that case, basically we can purchase it at a very lower cost. Right now, the database which we have deployed is a on-demand instance. Okay, it
Yeah.
has a hourly charge actually. And this instance, the reserved this database instance, you have to purchase it for a year or
Yeah.
yeah. So the database type which you want to purchase, the database class, and if we need multi-AZ deployment, we can enable it, and how long we want to purchase it, for 1 year, for 3 years, and submit. Then actually we'll able to, yeah, the payment type, all upfront, partial upfront. This will be the price. Actually, RDS databases are very expensive. If we
Yeah.
talk about the pricing, which is very expensive as compared to, but these databases are completely managed by AWS. Okay, there are, like actually if you talk about enterprises, they don't care about money. They don't care about charges.
Yeah.
What
Because
they care about is they, yeah, they care about is performance. They
yeah.
care about is performance. They care about availability. Okay, they don't care about pricing. They care about performance. They care about high availability. Okay, so that there should be no downtime on their application.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Now let us talk about the parameter group. Subnet group we are going to talk when we are familiar with networking in AWS.
Okay.
So if we go to parameter groups, so can you tell me about any application which you have used and you have to do the configuration in the application? Any application
Any application?
Mhm. Where you have to do the configuration.
Um. Well, you mean like any application that I have done the configuration?
Yes.
I haven't
Any
configured any.
application, I mean, in your laptop, you might have installed any software which requires any configuration.
Oh. Okay. Well, what about the the Windows application that we did yesterday?
Yeah, so yeah, you install the application and then you did some configuration, like adding the instance host name, the username, the password, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the same configuration changes if you want to make for your database instance. So those things are basically managed by parameter groups. Like here in RDS, we cannot log into the instance. Okay, we can just access the database. We cannot log into the server. So we can just access the database. So now let's say if you want to change any configuration changes of your database, so that is basically done through parameter groups.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that are basically managed by parameter groups. And what are parameter groups? If we open the parameter group, we
Mm-hmm.
will be able to see all the configurations which can be configured on the database.
Okay.
So these things are actually taken care by the database administrator.
Okay.
Okay? Database administrator or I would say, the developer
Yeah, the
who is in
developer.
charge of the database or who is using the database for the application.
Okay.
So the configuration is basically taken care by parameter groups. Any kind of configuration of our database.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's say if I make any changes in the configuration, and this is the parameter group which is attached to our instance. Now let's say if I try to make any changes,
Mm-hmm.
let's say edit parameter, and if by default it is set to 0, and if I set to 1, and if I set it to save changes, so it says that you cannot modify it. That is because this is the default parameter group, and
Okay.
we cannot modify the default parameter group.
Okay.
Okay, default
Because
parameter group cannot be
it can't be modified.
modified. So what we are now, let's say you want to do any configuration changes. So how we are going to do that? So for that, what we are going to do is we are going to create a new parameter group.
Okay.
And the parameter group family name, the group name, let's say my parameter, my PG, my parameter group. Description is optional and create. So this is basically, oh, I think it is required and create. So it is created now. Now what we will do, we will go to our database instance and we'll click on modify. And we'll modify the parameter group which is attached to our instance. By default, it has the default parameter group.
Okay.
By default, it has the default parameter group. Okay, and default parameter group cannot be modified.
Okay.
Okay, we cannot modify a default parameter group. Same is with option group. Option group we are going to talk up just after this parameter group. Option group also we cannot modify it, the default option group.
Okay.
So we'll choose the one which we created just now, like my PG, and save change and continue.
Okay.
And we'll set it to immediate and modify the instance. Okay, the state is now in modification. Now we can change anything in our parameter group, the one which we created. So the key point to note here is we cannot modify the default parameter group, and there can be some scenarios given in the certification exam where they can give you a scenario that the user is trying to modify the default parameter group and he's getting an error. So what can be the reason? So the reason can be that
It's
the
because
user
it's
is
a
trying to
default.
modify. Sorry.
If you cannot modify it, then it's a default, right?
Yeah, if we cannot modify, then we have to create it.
You have to
Then we
create.
have to create a new parameter group, attach it to our instance, and then we will be able to modify it.
Yeah.
So let's say if I try to modify now, so now I am able to modify it. Earlier it was giving us an error, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I go to the databases, if I click on this database,
Mm-hmm.
so here you can see the parameter group which we have applied to our instance. Okay, so just a recap. So with the help of parameter group, what we can do, we can make configuration changes of our database.
Mm-hmm.
And to make the configuration changes, what we have to do, we have to create a parameter group first. And we have to attach that parameter group to our instance. Because the default parameter group cannot be modified.
Okay.
Now if we go to option groups, we can see the different option groups which are available. So what is option groups? Like parameter groups are used for configuration changes.
Okay.
Now any changes related to security, basically are taken care in option groups.
Okay.
And same like the parameter group, as we cannot change, I mean we cannot customize a default parameter group. Same way we cannot customize a default option group.
Yeah.
So we'll click on create a group. Then the option group name, let's say my OG description. And then the database engine, right now in our case is
Mm-hmm.
MySQL. And the version of database
Mm-hmm.
and create. And once it is created, we'll be able to see the different types of options. Right
Okay.
now it doesn't have any options. So when we click on add option,
Mm-hmm.
then we'll be able to add some options in our option group. Options, it means like if you want to integrate it with some, let's say some caching server, or you want to make any security changes on your database. So those things are basically taken care in option group.
Okay.
Now if we go to events, so we'll be able to see the events of our database, like when it was created and all those information.
Okay.
Okay, so far all the things which we discussed here are basically uh,
On
the
the text.
topics. Sorry,
These are all on the text.
are on what?
it's on the test.
Yeah, exactly. That basically comes on the certification exam.
Yeah.
So right now our instance is up and running.
Okay.
Okay, so if you don't mind, let us take an lunch break and we'll continue from there from
Okay.
12.
What time do you want to
Yeah,
come back?
12 a.m. Sorry, 12 p.m.
Okay.
29 minutes. Yeah,
Okay.
all right. Yeah.
Works. Thanks. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm not speaking anything.
No.
Okay, now here you can see that I started creating the replica.
Mm-hmm.
And here you can see the role. The role is set to replica. If we go to the primary instance, which is deployed in Virginia region,
Mm-hmm.
so the role will be master because that is the main database
Mm-hmm.
which will accept write operations. Yeah, actually it is set to primary.
Okay.
And if we scroll all over down, so here you can see replication. So this is the primary database and this is the replica which we created in Ohio region. Here you can see role as primary and replica. So it will take some time. First it will be copied over, then it will deploy it. Once it is created, yeah, here you can see this is the primary database. Here also you can see the information of the database. Now, depending on our needs, we can create more replicas, depending on where our customers are located.
Okay.
So we can create up to 5 replicas of a database. Okay,
Okay.
we can create up to 5 replicas. Actually, I would like to share you one chart which is proposed by AWS. Yeah, this is a good example.
Okay.
Multi-easy. Benefits of multi-easy deployment. Read replicas. So you can see it only accepts the read writes, and this database only accepts reads.
Yeah. Okay.
This one actually the official documentation. Yeah, this is actually very helpful. I would suggest you to go through this one.
Okay.
You can just keep it as a,
Favorite.
yeah. So here you can see all the different type of databases which are available, like
Yeah.
multi-agent deployment, multi-region deployment, and read replicas,
Okay.
and what kind of replication they have. And for Aurora databases, it is completely different. Okay, because Aurora is a database which is proposed by AWS. Okay, so it has custom configurations and custom properties.
Okay.
Okay, like if you see multi-agent deployment, what is the use case? Main purpose is high availability. And let's say for non-Aurora databases, synchronous replication. Non-Aurora, it means the database which is not Aurora database. Like we have 6 database engines in RDS.
Okay.
Okay, out of which, except Aurora, we have 5 databases, right? So for
Mm-hmm.
non-Aurora, there is synchronous replication, and for Aurora database, it is asynchronous replication.
Yeah.
Then for non-Aurora, only the primary database is active. In Aurora, all the instances are active.
Mm-hmm.
Non-Aurora automated backups are taken from standby. Automated backups are taken from the shared storage layer. Always span at least 2 availability zones with a single region. Within a single region, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Automatic failover to standby or read replica when a problem is detected.
Okay.
This is for Aurora actually. Okay. Also, we can promote existing database as a standalone database. Let's say we have created a read replica in Ohio region. Now, what we want is we don't want to replicate or sync this database from that database which is in Virginia. So what
Okay.
we can do is we can, once it is created, actually it is still in creation state, we can make it as a standalone database. So if we see here,
Oh, it's still creating, so we can't promote it.
yeah, once it is created, we can promote it as a standalone database. Once we promote it as a standalone database, it will start accepting write operations as well.
Okay.
So far, do you have any doubts or any question in regards to RDS?
No.
I think we may require more than 4 days to complete the session
Oh,
because, yeah, because right now we have only gone through 3 services of AWS. Okay,
okay.
and there are almost more than 10 plus services we have to go through.
Okay. So what do you want to do? How do you want to do that?
Yeah, we can discuss with Matt also, and we can set a time maybe this weekend or no, I mean maybe next weekend we can do it or we can plan that out.
Okay.
Because I think so far we have just spent 10 hours, right? Almost
No,
1 hour. Mhm.
we've had like 3 days.
Yeah, I'm not counting today, but if you count last 2 days, so it is total 10 hours, right? In terms of learning, because we also had some break in between and all those things.
Yeah. Okay, well, next weekend is good for me.
Yeah, we'll check. We'll check. Maybe we'll see where we end up at the last session. I mean, on Monday. And based on that, basically, we think about what can be done.
Okay.
It's still on this session state. So it is nothing. Just once it is in running state, we will click on actions and promote. Promote it as a standalone database.
Okay.
Okay, so would you like to wait or we can move ahead?
I
It is
mean,
just 2 clicks we have to make it working.
you say what?
Okay, what we can do is let it, I mean, let it be into the creation state. What we can do is we can start with the other service of AWS. So
Okay.
because this is the last topic of RDS, which is read replica.
Okay.
RDS is not a very big topic. Okay.
Okay.
Now we'll start with the networking service of AWS, which is VPC.
Okay.
If you scroll down, all services you will find networking and content delivery, and here you will find VPC.
Okay.
So
Virtual private cloud.
yes, yes. Can you tell me something about networking?
Can I tell you something about networking?
Yeah. Okay, tell me how we can connect two computers.
We need a switch and a router and a VPC.
Okay. What is the switch?
The switch is, hold on, not the server. It's the, maybe that is the VPC the switch?
No. Switch is basically a hardware device. It doesn't have any relationship with the cloud. Yes, I'm trying to see how familiar you are with networking.
Oh yeah, I'm not. So you can just start from the beginning.
Yeah. So this is
Oh
how
yeah,
basically
yeah,
a
yeah.
switch
I've
looks
seen
like.
that.
Okay, so basically VPC deals with networking. So we'll start with very basics. So let's say we have two computers
Yeah.
and we want to connect these two computers.
Mhm.
So how we can connect it? So we can
Um.
connect it using a LAN cable.
Okay.
Now let's say we have three computers. Then how we can connect it?
Three computers. You need more cables or the switches.
Yeah, cable is there, but cable will not work. Cable because in computers we have only one port. We don't have multiple LAN ports.
Mhm.
So for in that case, basically we will require a switch,
Mhm.
and we connect the switch from this computer to this switch, from this computer to this switch, from this computer to this switch, from this computer to this switch.
Mhm.
Do you know what is the IP address?
IP address. Yeah.
Okay, can you define?
Yeah.
I mean, tell me something about IP address.
IP address. It's how you get to a website, right? It's a dedicate. It's the identification of the website or application. Am I right?
Okay. IP address is basically, we can say, IP address basically, IP stands for Internet Protocol, right? And
Uh-huh.
basically, all the machines on the network basically talk with the help of IP address. Okay, even right now we are connected to IP addresses. Let's say if I don't have IP address, or if you don't have IP address, you will not be able to connect to the internet.
Yeah.
Okay, and IP addresses are of two types: public IP address and private IP addresses. So let's
Okay.
say you want these computers to communicate with each other. So in that case, you need a private IP. Now let's say you want these computers to connect to the internet. So in that case, you need a public IP. Okay? And how we get a public IP? We get a public IP through a router. Okay.
Okay.
Do you know what is Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D IP addresses?
No.
Okay, those are just classes of IP address on basis of which we have, I would say, distributed the IP addresses. So let's say this system has this IP address, which is let's say 10.0.1.0, not 1.0, 1.3.
Okay.
So let's say this system has 1.3. This system
Mhm.
has 10.0.1.4. This has 5. I would say 5. This has 6. 5, 6, it means 10.0.1.5 and
Okay.
10.0.1.6. And now let's say these machines have 192 dot, let's say 1 dot, not 1 dot, 168.1.3, then 4, then 5, then 6. What I mean by 4, 4 means 192.168.1.4.
Yeah.
Okay? Now these machines, these computers can talk to each other.
Hmm.
But if these computers want to talk to this network, can they talk to them?
No,
Why?
because there's nothing connecting them.
Okay, what we can do is we can connect this LAN cable with the route with the switch. Then they
Yeah.
will be able. They will be. Yeah. Then can we connect? They
Yeah.
can communicate.
Yeah.
No,
No?
no. That is because the network is different. Here, if you see, the network is 10. Here, if you see, the network is 192. The network is different.
Okay.
Now, if you want these machines to communicate with this network,
We
in
have to.
that case, we need a router.
Okay.
Actually, there are several use cases of using router. One is router allows two different network to each other.
Okay.
Okay. So just now assume these computers as your instances which are running in the cloud.
Okay.
So in the cloud also we have something called switch, which we call subnet in the cloud. We
Okay.
call switch as subnet in the cloud, and in the subnet basically we launch the instance. Okay, and VPC, in VPC basically we have we call router as a VPC.
Okay.
Okay, and actually in routers we have routing tables. Okay, and what these routing tables has, it has like this network will be able to communicate with this network. These are basically routes. These are basically called routes.
Okay.
These are also the subnets.
And the subnet is the switch.
Yeah, and the subnet is actually a switch, and router is a VPC. And in router we have routing tables, and router is basically a VPC.
Okay.
And like in router we have route tables. Similarly in VPC we have route tables.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have route tables which are same as routing tables in
Yeah.
a router. Now, now just forget about VPC. Just forget about subnet. Now let's say you have these four computers. You have switch. You have router. Now you want to connect these instances. I mean these com- computers to the internet. So how we can do that?
Um.
We need a gateway.
Oh.
Okay, gateway is nothing which is provided by the internet service provider (ISP).
Okay.
And router is actually connected to a gateway. Right now, let's say the Wi-Fi which you have, it is connected to a gateway through which basically you are able to access the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and gateway is basically provided by ISP. Who is ISP? Internet service provider.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the company through which we are, I mean, we are using the internet. It's basically called ISP, Internet Service Provider.
Mm-hmm.
So we have gateways. With the help of gateway, basically these computers connect to the internet. Same in the cloud, we have internet gateways, which allows our instances to communicate over the internet.
Okay.
Now let us talk about cloud VPC. So the same architecture we have in the cloud VPC as well. So first we have a region. Okay, and inside region we have a VPC. Okay, before VPC we have availability zones.
Right.
Let's say two availability zones.
The database sensors.
And in a region we have a VPC.
Mm-hmm.
And when we create a AWS account, by default AWS creates a VPC in all the AWS regions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is created by default. We don't have to create it. By default, AWS creates a VPC in all the regions.
Okay.
So we have a region, and we have availability zones. So we have the VPC, and inside VPCs basically we have subnets, and these subnets are created in availability zones.
Those are the switches. Yep.
Yeah, which are switches. And inside this in subnets basically we launch our instances.
Okay.
So in here, so when we launch the instance in a subnet, and subnet basically defines in which availability zone our instance will run in. Okay.
Okay.
Now in router in VPC, basically we have route tables. And in route tables, basically we have routing. Like these subnets are connected to the route table, and through which the instances in other availability zones are able to communicate with each other. Okay.
Okay.
Then we have an internet gateway. And this route table is actually, it basically has a route to the internet gateway. And through this internet gateway, basically we connect to the instance. Or let's say this is a user. The user is connected to the internet. That is actually a reason that to access any resource in the cloud, we must be connected to the internet. If
Yeah.
we are not connected to the internet, then we will not be able to access the resources in the cloud.
Okay.
So when we do SSH to our EC2 instance, let's say this is the instance we have deployed, and when we do SSH to the instance, so first we have to make sure we are connected to the internet. Then our request go to the internet gateway, and through the internet gateway it goes to the route table, and based on the route it goes to the subnet, and from the subnet it goes to the instance. Okay,
Mm,
that is how basically we connect to our EC2 instance.
okay. Oh, wait, can you go back? Can I see that again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So this is how basically a default VPC basically looks like.
Okay.
This is a route table, and these are subnets.
Mhm.
Okay, it is completely similar to what we taught here. We talked about here. It is completely similar to it.
Yeah. But the only difference is that one is virtual and one is physical.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, now if we go to VPCs, so this is the default VPC which is created by AWS. Okay, And the default VPC basically have subnet in all the availability zones. Okay, it has subnets in all the availability zones. Just for now, for a small example, we just took two availability zones. So
Okay.
let's say if a region has six availability zones, so it will have six subnets in each of these availability zones. Not six subnet, I mean one subnet in each of the availability zone,
Okay.
and one route table and one internet gateway.
Okay.
So this is the VPC. And when we launch the instance, let's say if we go to launch instance, so basically we launch our instance, or we can say we create all our resources which require network in a VPC.
Mm-hmm.
Any resource in AWS which require network, we create that resource in a VPC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like so far we have learned about EC2, RDS. So these all resources basically talk with network. Okay, so these requires VPC. Okay,
Okay.
these resources actually we create inside a
Yeah.
VPC.
Okay. They were created inside of a VPT.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So far we used to like skip this step. If you see here we have network. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is the account. Because here I have, okay, let us go to Ohio region. Because here I have some other VPCs, so will create a confusion for you. If you have any instance, you can terminate it. Now we do not, at the moment we do not need any instance.
Okay.
And just delete the snapshots or all the things which you have created.
Okay.
Because
What
for
about
those
the
resources will be charged.
Okay, so I don't have any instance.
If you have a AMI, just deregister it.
I have a I have a snapshot.
Yeah, just delete that snapshot.
Okay. And what about the AMI?
Yeah, just delete that as well.
Okay. What about my security groups?
No, security group is not an issue. Let it be.
Okay. So all the things that charge me are deleted.
Mm, yeah, I'm in Ohio region and I'll go to VPC. I already had some VPC, that's why I'm switching my region.
Okay.
Okay, so here you can see the default VPC.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go to, when we launch the instance, we launch actually the instance in a VPC, inside a VPC and inside a subnet.
Mm-hmm.
As we saw in the diagram, like we launch our instances inside a subnet. And where
Yeah.
is subnet? Subnet is inside a VPC.
Yeah.
So launch instance. Next is AMI. So number of instance we set it to 1. And here you can see network and subnet. Now based on the region, we have subnets. Oh, sorry, based on the VPC, we have subnets. So basically, if you see these subnets are basically defining our availability zone. Okay, so basically subnet basically defines where our instance will be launched.
Mm-hmm.
Start storage will be on launch. So when we launch an instance, we launch an instance inside a VPC, inside a subnet, right?
Yeah.
Now we are going to talk about how we can create our own VPC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
so now first let us talk about why we are going to create our own VPC. Why not the default VPC? Okay. Now let's say what I want is I want to run my application servers, app servers in the public network. Public network it means it will be accessible over the internet. And my database servers I want to run in not database server, or you can say uh, your let's say let's say data servers. Data servers in private network.
Mm-hmm.
Private network it means it will not be exposed over the internet, right?
Yeah.
So what this will fulfill? This will fulfill basically, let's say you are storing some sensitive data. Let's say let's say your application is storing some sorry, let's say your application is a banking application and it is storing let's say credit card information, it is storing username, passwords. Okay. Now you don't want those things to be exposed over the internet in terms of security. Okay. So what you can do is you can store it inside a you can store you can create a private network, you can create two network actually, one public network and one private network. Okay, which is one public subnet and one private subnet. And in public subnets you will be hosting your application servers, and in your private subnet you will be hosting your data servers. And data servers will be storing your data, application data, like any kind of sensitive information.
Okay.
So what we are going to do is we are going to create a VPC.
You're gonna create a
So
VPC?
yeah, create VPC. and then we have to give a name to the VPC. Let's say my VPC.
Okay.
What is VPC? VPC is just like our router, and
Okay.
our like a router basically has IP address. Same our uh, VPC also has a IP address.
Okay.
So let's say 10.0.0.16. There are some reserved ranges which are set by AWS for setting up the IP address, and this IP address is one of them. And rest thing we will keep it as default, and we'll click on create VPC.
Okay.
So we have created a VPC. And when we create a VPC, there are some resources which are by default created by it.
Okay.
So when we create a custom VPC, there are some resources which are by default created, which
Okay.
are a security group is created, which is basically a default security group. Earlier, we used to deal with security groups in EC2, right? But
Yeah.
actually, security groups are managed by AWS. I mean, security groups are actually managed under VPC. Okay. So when we create a VPC, a root table is created, default security group is created, and default NACL is created. So these are the three things which are created when we create a VPC. By default, these things are created. Now our first task is to create subnets.
Okay.
So we'll go here, subnets. And just for this example, we are just going to create two subnets, one public and one private subnet.
Okay.
Create subnet. We will call it as public subnet. And in which VPC we want to create the subnet? Let's say this VPC.
Yeah.
And in which availability zone we have to create the subnet. So as we saw here in this diagram, so subnets are created inside the availability zone.
Yeah.
If you start capturing these images in your mind, so it will be easier for you to work in the, on the console. Okay, because if we see subnets are created inside availability zone. The same thing you are able to see here. You have to choose a availability zone. And VPC we create inside a region. So the same thing actually we are doing in the console as well.
Okay.
Let me for CIDR block and create. So we have created one public subnet. Now we are going to go ahead and create a private subnet.
Okay.
And the VPC which we created and availability zone. We can create it in the same availability zone. We can create it in another availability zone. But in most of the cases, we create the subnets in multiple availability zones to achieve high availability. Okay, so that we can utilize all the availability zones to launch our EC2 instances.
Mm-hmm.
So we created two subnets. One we are calling it as public subnet, and one we are calling it as private subnet. Now what we are going to do is we are going to go to root tables, and at the moment we have only one root table which is created by AWS. As we discussed, when we create a VPC, a root table is by default created by AWS. Okay,
Uh-huh.
and this root table is called the main root table. Main is set to yes. Now we are going to create our own root table. Let's say public root table.
Yeah.
And we have to choose the VPC and create. And we are going to create another root table called private root table. When you have to create a custom network where you have to create like public and private subnet, in that case we have to create multiple root tables. Private root table and create. So we have created two root tables, one public and one private, and this is the default root table which is created by AWS. Okay, when we create a
Uh-huh.
VPC. So far, any doubts or any questions?
No, that was pretty simple.
Yeah. Now, if we go to the main root table which is created by AWS, and if we go to subnet associations, so we have to add subnets inside a root table. Okay, if we go to this diagram, so what we have a connection from this
Yeah.
to this and this to this. So we have to associate subnets inside the root table. Okay. So subnet association, and if if you see here, if we do not associate any subnet inside the root table, then this is going to happen. The following subnets have not been explicitly associated with any root tables and therefore are associated with the main root table. Okay, if you do not associate the subnets to a root table, so by default they get associated to the main root table.
Yeah.
So this is something which is asked in the certification exam. They can give you some scenarios, and they can ask you like why the subnet is. Uh, let's say the user has doesn't. I mean the user hasn't assigned any root table to the subnet. Then which root table will the subnet belong to? So it will belong to the main root table.
Okay.
So in public root table we will add the public subnet, and in private root table we will add the private subnet. Let's say if you have created three root table or three public subnets, and three subnets. Let's say we have created six subnets, three public subnets and three private subnets, and each subnets in one availability zone. Okay. So
Okay.
then those three subnets we are going to add in the public root table, and another three subnets which we have created as private subnet we will be adding it to the private root table. In public root table, we will add the public subnet, and in private root table, we will add the private subnet.
Okay.
Now the next thing is you have to create an internet gateway. On the left side, if you go here, if you click on internet gateways, this is the internet gateway which we have created. Oh, sorry, this is the internet gateway which is used by the default UPC which is created by AWS.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to create our own internet gateway.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say my IDW and create internet gateway. And now we are going to attach this internet gateway to our instance. To our VPC.
Okay.
So if we go to internet gateways, the internet gateway is created and the state is detached. So we have to attach it to our VPC.
Okay.
We can attach only one internet gateway at a time. Then we'll go to route tables and public route table, and we'll go to routes, and here we'll click on edit routes, and we will add a route like 0.0.0.0 to internet gateway.
Mm-hmm.
and this we are doing in the public root table. And what is this IP address? This is IP address is any IP address on the internet. This basically defines any IP address on the internet,
Okay.
and we are pointing it to the internet gateway. The same thing we have done here. Okay, now what we are going to do, we are going to launch one instance in a public subnet, and we launch another instance in private subnet, the one which we created, and inside the VPC which we created.
Okay.
And we click on launch instance. And while launching the instance, network will choose the VPC which we created,
Mm-hmm.
and then the public subnet.
Oh yeah. We usually ignore this part.
Sorry?
I said we've ignored this part before.
Yeah. So far we used to ignore this part. And public IP we will set it to enable, which will allow the instance to get a public IP address.
Mm-hmm.
The next add storage, review and launch. Launch. So we have launched one instance in the public subnet, and let us try to connect to this instance. Were you creating the VPC along, or were you just looking?
No, I'm watching.
Okay. We are able to connect to the instance which we launched in the public subnet. Okay, so we are connected to the instance which we have launched in the public subnet. Now we are going to launch another instance, and this instance we are going to
Okay.
launch in the private subnet. VPC is going to choose this my VPC, the one which we created, and private subnet. And basically, this subnet basically defines where our instance will be launched. I mean, which availability zone our instance will be launched. In the instance which we launch, let us name this instance. Let's say public instance.
Okay.
And the second one which we have launched in the private subnet, we'll call it as private instance. So right now, if you see, this instance doesn't have a public IP, but it is running. So how we can connect to this instance?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, but how we can connect to this instance? The instance which is in private subnet. It doesn't have a public IP.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so what? Okay, so these instances can communicate with each other, right? If we go to this diagram, the one which we were discussing here, like these computers can communicate with each other, right? If they can communicate with each other, so they can, like we can connect from this computer to this computer, right? So the same thing will happen here. First, we'll connect to this instance, and through this instance, we'll connect to the private instance.
Okay.
Let's say ping. So let's say SSH. Then the username, which is EC2 user, @ and the private IP of this instance. And this is the private IP of this instance. Here you can see we are able to access to that instance. But it says permission denied. Why it is showing permission denied? Because it is looking for a private key.
Okay.
So what we have to do, first we have to copy the private key to this instance, public instance. And private key is right now sitting in our machine.
Okay.
So private. So I'm going to create a file here with p.pem. Paste the content. Change the permission of the file. You don't have to actually worry about these commands.
I was getting ready to ask you about them too.
Yeah. So these things basically are done by a system administrator. And we are not a system admin, we are cloud architects.
Okay.
Just to explain you these things, just to get clarity on what we are doing, that's why we are logging into the instance and doing this stuff. Okay, but in the real life, we will not, I don't, like it will be very rare case when we are going to log into the instance.
Okay.
So now we are connected to the instance which is running in the private subnet.
Mm-hmm.
And in this instance, now we can store our any kind of private data.
So when we're deploying are we going to be using a terminal a lot?
No. After VPC, we are not even going to launch an instance. No, we are going to launch an instance. No, we are not going to use terminal a lot.
I mean, so we'll turn like questions about the terminal. Will it be on the test?
No, no, no. There will be no questions in the test about terminal.
Okay.